Hi, my name is Taylor. I have had some pretty crazy experiences in the dating world. I'm here to discuss these stories and experiences in hopes that people can relate.
And my name is Christy. I also am here to share some stories. I think between both Taylor and I, we're going to be able to bring you some really good humor and making light of dating as it is in the world today.
I would like to add a disclaimer before we start. So, the names and places in these experiences have been changed to protect the identity of the people involved. So, we are going to start our podcast by getting into the series of the evolution of dating and how it has progressed throughout the years.
So we kind of start actually back from a quote that we found in the sense of the word dating. And it's actually kind of funny because it's definitely not what we would think dating is today. But it was based back in 1896 from a gentleman named George Ade. He told of a story of a clerk named Artie whose girlfriend's heads were being turned by other men. Now, I mean, come on, Taylor. Like, really? That's really what they thought dating was back then?
It also sounds a lot like what we would call catcalling nowadays.
I agree. I mean, come on. I think the whole dating word is just completely gone array, but we'll get into more of that.
So, there are three types of dating. There's duty dating, which you're practicing dating skills and it's not based on chemistry. I feel like that was probably done a lot in the 60s and 70s. I felt like a lot of people just kind of dated to create a family and play house, it sounded like.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like I look at my parents and they were actually high school sweethearts. And so they married at a very young age and started a family. And yet again, like so many people back in those days that married early and in that time, they tend to have created families and stayed together. Granted there was still divorce then. I remember some of my friends in high school and all getting divorced and all. So but yeah, totally different today as well as far as that goes.
I know that my grandparents, they've been together for quite a while. So they're in their 80s right now. And they got together whenever my granddad was 28 and my grandma was 20. So there was a big difference in age between them, which I think at that time that was probably kind of something that seemed crazy at that point. But I know that they didn't date for too long before they got married and started the family. And I know that my aunts and uncles, they've been together for a long time. So I think that it just kind of runs in the family typically too.
Well, and also there's a situation like with my grandmother who her first husband died at a very young age. And when he passed away, she had two children and was a single mother. And so my grandfather happened to know of her, because they kind of hung out in the same circle back then, but he went off and married and had kids and everything. And then he ended up being divorced and had custody of his kids. And so when him and my grandmother actually married, I actually remember him telling me a story one time about how he didn't really know if he loved my grandmother when he married her, that he knew she was a good woman and she would take care of his kids and help in raising, his children and all, because back then, of course, he was the one working, so it was so, I think, kind of when I heard that story for the first time, I was like a little shocked because they went on to have 40 something years of marriage, I believe, and he ended up loving her, and they had a great love. So it's just amazing how. Anyway, we're going to talk about some of our stories too in this podcast and how some of these things kind of relate to us. So on to the next little type of dating.
It's called real dating, which means you're mutually attracted to somebody and you go out. I feel like that is definitely more of how it is nowadays.
Yeah, and that's kind of how we would want it to be. You want to create something with someone. You want to be able to go and experience dates and really get to know that person. And I think we all hope for that. And nowadays some of that stuff is totally gone yet again out the window. But that's other things we'll get into along the way.
So we're going to get into our third type of dating, which is courtship. So that's looking for a relationship and both are interested. The term with that would be an exclusive relationship, which I feel like that was definitely big back in probably the 40s, 50s, 60s and so.
Right.
Especially, how you knew that people were exclusive because somebody wore a pin of, like, the girl would wear a pin of the guys, or she would wear a jacket of the guys. And that's kind of how you knew, like, who was together and who wasn't.
Yeah, almost kind of like, I wouldn't want to say branding in a term then, would you? But it's almost like maybe they were okay. They're like, you're mine. Nobody else is
Yeah, it's
taking
kind of
you.
like I own you because you're wearing something of mine.
Exactly. And I guess we really did. I remember being, in that young age where you did have stuff like that and kind of felt special because you were like, oh, look, I'm wearing so and so's bracelet or, this and that. So too bad we can't go back to some of that.
Yeah, I know in the 2000s, that's whenever, I know I'm making myself sound young, but the 2000s was during my era, and I know that there wasn't a whole lot of that, unfortunately.
Right, yeah. No pin wearing then.
No.
All right, so we're going to move along a little bit. And we're actually going to take you kind of on another little just road because this is the stuff that's leading up to what we hope to really talk about, in the episodes forthcoming and all. We're going to have different topics, obviously, in all of our episodes, but we wanted to really start with kind of how things have progressed from back. And we kind of started really looking more towards like the 80s, when Taylor and I both, like she said, she's more, but I was still a young one in the 80s, I must say. But um, that's when stuff really was not out there. We didn't have the services, the matchmaking services. There were no cell phones, which I'm sure a lot of you still have a hard time believing that we did not have cell phones, but we did not have cell phones. Maybe only the really rich people had cell phones. My boss had a bag phone. I do remember that. But anyway, you more or less called somebody on their house phone.
I don't know.
Actually used house phones.
I feel like that wasn't safe nowadays, because what if you were in danger and you were somewhere and you needed some assistance? Like, what did you do?
Yeah, that's true. I guess we thought we were maybe safer back in those
Yeah.
days. But yeah, and it was more like, you went to the movies, you did the things we still do today, but it was more of a like, that was your date. You go to a movie, you go to the bowling alley, you go to a sporting event. And boys really had to more so meet parents back then. It wasn't like they just could say, hey, let's go out. And the girl, just said, okay. It's like we got to clear it with the parents and all. And there was flowers that, boys would take to the girls back then. It was almost like there was a little more respect for the girls back then by the boys. And both usually would agree on things. Well, let's go here. Do you want to go here? Yeah, let's go here. So, you know,
Yeah, I definitely have a story to share about boys respecting girls, because I definitely think that that is something that is unfortunately dead nowadays. So I'm just going to give a little story. So I'm out with one of my homegirls and we're, bar hopping and whatnot. And she has a lot of guy friends, which I have a lot of guy friends too. I grew up with all boy cousins, so I'm kind of just used to the craziness. So one of her friends comes over and introduces himself to me. Well, he didn't even really introduce himself. He came over and gave me a hug and just grabbed my ass. And I feel like that is just not respectful. I mean, back in the day, that would have been something that was not respectful at all. I think you would have been looked at completely differently then as you do now. It seems like something that's the norm now.
right, yeah. Getting a grope as opposed to a handshake. So definitely not the way we want it. How about a hey, let me get a proper introduction and let me
Right. Like,
shake
hey,
your
my name
hand.
is, yeah.
Exactly. Well, I mean, yeah, that's just we don't want that. So if anybody's making notes out there, just remember ass grabbing is not a way to say hello. We prefer to get a couple more introductions and
I
dates in
mean,
there before you grab our
he
butt.
gave me a hug too, which, like, the hug, I'm okay with that. But whenever he grabbed my ass, that was a bit much right there.
Yeah, we got to draw a line somewhere, I think.
Right.
So, all right, so speeding up, Taylor's going to take us into the 90s, I should say.
Okay. So I was actually still very young in the 90s, but we're going to get into that. So the 1990s, they were still very old fashioned. They didn't text and they didn't have phones. They still didn't even have cell phones at that point. So they were still kind of in the Stone Ages. They were earnest. They wrote notes, which actually that was something that was even carried on into the 2000s whenever I was in junior high and high school. We wrote notes to people that we liked, and we passed notes to our friends, and we passed notes to our crushes and stuff like that. So that was something that, was in the 90s, but it was also in the 2000s. So writing notes was all the rage. It was considered primitive texting,
That's
kind of
pretty
like
funny.
yeah, kind of like a precursor, I guess, to what texting would be. And it basically is having your feeling in writing.
Which I can remember back. There was actually a guy that he was in college with my best friend's boyfriend, and they were roommates, and they were up in Spartanburg, and he wrote me some of the most funniest letters. And he was kind of a comedian type guy anyway, and we would always put like silly return addresses on the envelope, like just stupid stuff like me on the ninth floor at the psych ward, so and so city and state, or just like random stuff or return messages. And when I was actually moving and had to go through 27 years of stuff, mind you, I found some of those notes. I mean, he did stuff like doodles, little, he was going to get a haircut. So he's like, what type of haircut should I get with all these little mohawks and little, so it was really sweet because I remember just kind of getting butterflies in my stomach every time I would come home and I would have a letter from him. So I think again that's something that we've kind of failed short of, is putting our feelings really in writing.
Nobody ever wants to talk about their feelings anymore. They just kind of want to jump right into getting physical. It's kind of a dead thing, unfortunately, I think.
Yeah, we're hoping to get that back though. That's why we're hoping maybe some of this stuff will make sense and people will realize, hey, let's just kind of try to get back to some of the old ways that was. Obviously a lot of things have changed, and social media and stuff like that. It's just really, people may say it's helped the situation with dating, and now you have all these other options, kind of like the whole working from home thing. You can sit there in your PJs and just swipe left, swipe right, or whatever, and you don't really have to worry about it physically seeing this person unless you actually set up a meeting. But then we're going to get into probably actually a whole episode of online dating. So some of the things we're going to share for later episodes. But yeah, back to our little history ride here. So 90s, mirrored kind of the 80s to some degree, I think. Wouldn't you agree,
I
Tiffany?
think so too. There was definitely a lot more talking and a lot more sharing of the feelings. And another thing that they did in the 90s, if you had a bunch of girlfriends, you guys all got together and got ready for a date. It was kind of just like a group thing.
Right. Yeah. It was exciting. I think you had that real big excitement for dates back then.
Making mixtapes, I'm still into that to this day. If I like somebody, I will make a whole playlist of songs dedicated to them. So I'm kind of hoping they bring that back soon because that's one of the things that I'm into.
Oh yeah.
Let's bring back mixtapes.
Hashtag bring back mixtapes.
Yes, because I feel like songs can really tell how you feel about somebody.
Yeah, especially if you have a hard time. And I get it, guys. It is hard to talk about your feelings, and it's really not easy for women sometimes too, depending on the situation. But I do feel like men are a little more closed off and wanting to be honest and all. And that's another thing that we are going to kind of discuss a little bit of, is just how honesty in dating, like we're grown people, most of us are, that are out there looking for something, especially if it's something serious. So why not, let's just get the honesty out there. Let's just be honest here. So in hopes of that happening. But anyway, so 90s roar through, and guess what comes about in the 90s, Taylor?
So in 1994, they invented Kiss.com, which was a modern dating service. It was kind of like the, I guess, prequel to Plenty of Fish and the prequel to prequel to Tinder. In 1995, they also came out with
Da 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 da.
Match.com, which is still very big to this day.
And it wasn't that a paid. I think that wasn't a paid site. I believe it was a paid
Yeah,
site.
I feel like Match.com was one of the sites that you had to pay to use, and if you didn't pay to use it, you didn't really have a whole lot of features on it.
It's funny. I almost want to say I think I had an account. Like I wonder if you if you don't renew it, like if you still actually have an account out there. Like MySpace. I think did you have a MySpace? I had a MySpace.
I did not have a MySpace. Well, I did have a MySpace behind my parents' back. Sorry. But I was more of a Facebook type of girl, to be honest. But what I did like about MySpace is you could make it like really personal and tailored to your liking. So I did enjoy that. But yeah.
But yeah, and I think that again is when a whole new world of dating evolved is when the whole site started becoming available, matching on, because before that really there was nothing out there of any kind of service. There were studies that kind of go back from the 1950s and all, but it was mainly like colleges and things like that. Like Stanford did a class project where they used a questionnaire to match up like 49 men to 49 women. And another study was done by Iowa State University in like 1963. But it really, those were just more like studies that were being done, not anything that really gave the availability to open that whole world up to everybody, which is what Match.com allowed to happen. Is, again, you could search people anywhere and everywhere. I mean, it didn't even have to be in your own city.
If you were the type of person where you were into those long distance relationships, you could find somebody on Match.com.
Exactly. And of course, you would hope that there was a lot of honesty there. But I think that we all know that, a lot of things were not as they would seem, as we should say, with photos and things like that. I mean, you see a picture of this guy and I'm like, oh, he looks really hot, and just like, and then you meet the person and it's totally not what that person looks like, and maybe it was him like 20 years ago or something like that.
Yeah.
And they, had more hair and everything, but it's like, that's one thing even I think today is scary. It's like, is that really the person I'm going to meet on my date, or is some Doctor Strange going to come out and be totally crazy?
I think catfishing was even a thing back in like the 90s or before that. We just didn't really hear of it, and it didn't really happen quite as often. But I think with TV shows like Catfish and stuff like that, that definitely brought to light the fact that these types of things do happen. You will meet people online who are not at all what they say they are.
Exactly. Yeah. And if you're open to that, then keep on swiping and keep on this and that. I think sometimes I really just haven't gone back that route again. I mean, I did it for like I said, I think I did the match, and then I might have actually joined eHarmony at one time. And there is a gentleman that I did meet on there, but I have a story about him later on in the episode. So
I have plenty of stories for the online dating realm, so I will be keeping those for that episode.
Where she's gonna fill that episode up.
Listen, I probably will fill that episode up with plenty of stories and information.
I'll let Tay take the ring on that one. So
there will be lots of educational information for that one.
But yeah, so we are wrapping up, because not really wrapping up, but we kind of just figured, because in looking back at like, the stuff from more or less when the social media world hit, and the dating services were back then, but then in 2003 is when MySpace kind of came about. 2004 is when Facebook came about. So, it kind of, all the other things that we remembered about things like, old school ways, I guess you could say, were pretty much somewhat shot out the window back when that whole social media thing opened up. And now it's crazy. I mean, it's just, there's basically 2,500 online dating services in the US and 1,000 new dating sites services coming up a year. So it's just insane, because you're thinking there's a lot of dang people out there dating then,
You know, and
but
they have dating sites really for all types of people. They have farmers only.
exactly.
They have, what is it, christianmingle.com.
Christianmingle.com.
They have, is it Grinder? Is that the other one?
I think I've heard of
Yeah.
that one, yeah.
Yeah, so it's like they have dating sites for pretty much anything that you're into or anything that you kind of, you know, enjoy. So there's more options out there.
Definitely more options. So we're gonna, like I said, just hopefully bring you guys some funny stories and some information. We definitely want to hear from you as well, and are going to open up uh, each episode with comments based on the prior episode. So, like our next episode, if you want to email us your comments about this episode, then we'll spend a couple of minutes on our next episode sharing those comments and all, because we want to hear your opinions. We want to hear maybe some things that you want to topics you would like to hear about, or um, you know anything that within the dating or relationship category you feel like Mike could use some further discussing or whatever. We definitely would love to hear your thoughts on that as well.
You know, we really like engaging with people and hearing what they have to say. So definitely send any type of comments or crazy stories our way, and we'll be more than happy to share it.
So we're gonna wrap this episode up. We again just wanted, this is our first episode. Yay, Tay!
Woo!
Woo! So we hope you've enjoyed hearing a little bit about dating and the evolution of dating and what is yet to come. Couple things we'll give you before we sign off is we do have an email address. And Tay, what is our email address?
So our email address is going to be twochickstellall@gmail.com. It's pretty simple to remember, and you're going to want to spell out two. So it's going to be TWO chickstellall@gmail.com.
And we'll go ahead and give you a little peek at what our next episode is going to be about, which is going to be pretty interesting. And I don't think we've shared our names yet, even though we're going to be sharing this with all of our friends, so you're going to kind of know who we are. But hey, we're grown adults here. We can discuss things, and
yes.
I think it's good to be honest nowadays about everything, especially dating. So our next topic is going to be, our episode rather, is going to be about one night stands. So, and we're not referring to the little tables that are by your bedside. We're referring to those other type of one night stands. So we hope you will join us for our next episode. And we probably, we're going to hope to do these weekly, but we're going to share this one and get some feedback and all. And I'm actually going to be on vacation. So unless Tay-Tay's brave enough, she can get on there and have at it. She's welcome to do that. She can do an episode.
I might
pop on. I'll tell her. Get on there, girl.
Yeah, I might pop on and have.
She can share. Well, what would be cool is if we get some comments, then she could, do a little, just, hey, we're gonna share your comments already episode, and get some thoughts, because I'm sure it's gonna be good stuff. I'm excited to see what y'all send us and all. So we hope you've enjoyed it. And again, just look for our next upcoming podcast. When we kind of have a definite date, we might throw it out there. But again, we're hoping to get these on like a weekly schedule as well. So
I'm really excited to talk about one night stands, because I feel like I've been very much into that since I've been a single girl. Just saying.
I mean, all it takes, I think, especially in a location that Tay and I are in, which we won't share that right now. But you just look at a guy and you can give him a look, and it's like, hey, look, it's just kind of. I feel like anywhere though, that's probably. Maybe there's other code signs we don't even know about, Tay. Something they might slip you or something. That just means what
our viewers might have some insight.
Oh, viewers, we need. Oh, that's what we need from you. We need to know that. That could be something we could use, especially on our next episode. Is there actually a sign that someone, and given male or female, because females can approach and do the exact same thing.
Yeah.
But is there some sign you give, body language or something like that, other than just kind of, giving that motion when you're standing at a bar to somebody or something that says, I want a one night stand with you. So send us your comments on that, and we look forward to our next episode with you.
All right. Have a good one, guys.
See ya.